Europe's energy security showed its weakness on Monday when power was almost completely knocked out in the Iberian Peninsula for more than 10 hours. Telecommunications were crippled, with internet traffic dropping by a whopping 90% in Portugal and 80% in Spain. It comes as AI fuels a massive expansion in data centers, their footprints set to double in Spain alone in the next 4 years. Well, today in Tech 24, we're asking whether Europe's power grid is ready. And for this, I'm joined by our technology editor, Peter O'Brien, and Renee Bettini from our partner media, Enter. Great to see you both. So I'll start with you, Peter. How were the data centers affected by Monday's blackout?
So data centers all have contingency built in, or at least they should have. And on Monday, what they would have done is drop off the main grid and go to backup power. This is usually diesel generation, but it can be batteries as well. And batteries often provide that bridge onto diesel generation later on. But a lot of these batteries basically last only about 8 hours. And you really don't want to be on diesel generation at all if you can avoid it. So if the power outage had lasted longer, then it could have been even more catastrophic. We already saw, as you said, how difficult it was for people to connect to the internet and speak to each other. People were even struggling to make calls. But let's be clear, the worst nightmare for any IT technician is to lose power in your data center. You could lose your client's very precious data, or it could become corrupted, and in any case, it's going to be extremely expensive. So if it had lasted any longer, then large businesses could have had big problems data management-wise on their hands.
And could the increase in data centers coming online may have been part of the problem?
Well, we know that data centers are multiplying across Spain. That was the subject of a report from our Spanish correspondents last week. But there is no suggestion as to this being the case, as to this being the cause of the outage. In fact, we know very little about what caused this major outage. It does, though, raise questions as to whether our grids in Europe can handle the amount of data centers coming online with the AI boom. And not only AI, but electric vehicles as well. They need a whole lot of energy infrastructure as well. And Reuters reports the Spanish government has actually taken this on board, like many governments around the world, and are investing some 52 billion euros by 2030 to upgrade the grid to handle AI and electric vehicles. But we'll see if it's enough.
We'll see indeed. Just turning now to you, Renee. So your report on data centers and power demand across Europe was published just as this happened. Tell us more.
Yes, exactly. So at Enter, we focus on news that will impact 18 to 35-year-olds across Europe. And that's a demographic that is very much the primary user of AI, right? So because they don't usually see the infrastructure behind it, a lot of users don't really realize what has to go in them being able to use ChatGPT or all other sorts of AI tools. And that's what we wanted to do, kind of go behind the scenes of AI and see everything that has to happen before AI even hits users' devices. The first place you wanted to start is data centers, as we were discussing earlier. And these are the huge buildings that contains all the processing units and the data that AI needs to function. There was an International Energy Agency report that came out earlier this April, and it said that AI energy demand and data center energy demand specifically will double by 2030 and even quadruple in the case of AI optimized data centers. So, to explore this a bit further, we contacted one of the major players in the industry, Microsoft, and we asked them if we could go film in one of the data centers. And while we weren't allowed to film inside the functioning one, they invited us on a press visit to go see a whole new data center campus that they're building in Finland. And we decided to go because they're doing something quite interesting when it comes to energy optimization and energy efficiency.
All right. I believe we actually have an extract of that report. Let's take a look.
We're here in Espoo on the outskirts of Helsinki, the construction site for one of Microsoft's newest data centers here in Finland. This data center will be one of our most sustainable data centers in Europe. So excess heat that's generated from the data center will go on to heat around 250,000 houses in the area. Hot comes in here, cold out there. We're not sure. So Just getting my bearings around this particular unit. Every data center needs to optimize energy efficiency. That's the primary operational cost in running a data center. So making it more efficient means making sure that you're using that electricity in a most efficient way possible. And so a way like this, where we can take what is a waste product and essentially create new value for a waste product, is kind of an example of this circular system that we're setting up here as well.
Having watched the whole thing, Rene, it seems like the big question in your report is whether the demand is compatible with our renewable energy goals.
Yeah, that's right, Peter. And the main point being that it's great that all of these tech and AI companies are trying to develop their tools focusing or using 100% renewables. But if so much of Europe's low carbon energy is being used for AI, is there going to be enough to cut our carbon emissions by half by 2030 and to be completely carbon neutral by 2050, which is the continent's goal? And we talked about this with experts at the Shift Project, which is a think tank that focuses on decarbonizing the economy, and they weren't exactly positive about this. Specifically, we talked with one of their research engineers, Marlene de Bank, and she said that it's very unlikely that AI will be completely decarbonized at the speed at which it's developing in Europe. And she made the example of China and the US, which are both countries that started off powering much of their AI with renewables, but then moved to having to use coal or other carbon-intensive sources of energy to sustain the pace at which new data centers were being built. And ultimately, a lot of it comes down to what we use AI for. So at the Shift Project, Marlene told us that they believe that we should focus our attention on AI that helps us enact the climate transition. So AI tech that helps us with things like saving energy, managing waste, preventing floods, this kind of thing. And at the same time, they think that AI tech that slows down or creates obstacles for the climate transition should be restricted. So that's tech like optimizing petrol extraction. In any case, what's sure is that to be able to rely solely on renewable energy for AI, there's going to have to be a selection on what kind of use we make of it.
Yeah, and it gets very political very quickly, doesn't it? People
It
very
does.
quick to point the fingers. Even at renewable energy this week in Spain, as soon as it happened, people said it's the fault of Spain's renewables that we've got this power outage. Now, I should say Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, said this was a complete lie. So he better get on it and figure out what the cause was pronto, Jenny.
All right, so Rene, where can we find the full report then?
You can find the full report on Enter EN, so Enter English's YouTube channel, as well as all our other reports. So make sure to check
and I
those
should
out.
say we should check out our Spanish team's report, Thirsty Giants, on YouTube as well. So lots of energy news from France 24 and Enter at the moment.